I never thought that my marriage to John would end in divorce. We had been married for over 10 years and had built a life together, but there were warning signs. Looking back, I can see them now. It all started with the little things. Like John forgetting our anniversary. I remember how hurt I was when he didn't even acknowledge it. I tried to brush it off, thinking that he had just been busy with work, but as time went on, I began to notice other things. "John, are you coming to bed?" I asked one night, feeling frustrated that he had been working late again. "I'll be there in a bit," he replied, not even bothering to look up from his laptop. "You always say that, but you end up staying up half the night working," I said, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. "I have a lot of deadlines to meet. I can't just stop working whenever I feel like it," he said, still typing away. I sighed and got into bed, feeling lonely and neglected. It seemed like John was always working, even on the weekends. We hardly spent any time together as a family, and when we did, he was often distracted, checking his phone or answering work emails. One day, I brought up my concerns with him. "John, I feel like we're drifting apart. You're always working, and we hardly spend any time together," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm sorry, but I have a lot of responsibilities at work. You know that," he replied, sounding defensive. "I understand that, but what about our family? Don't we matter too?" I asked, feeling frustrated. "Of course you do, but I have to take care of business first." "That's what being a provider means," he said, getting up to leave. I watched him go, feeling more alone than ever. Something was wrong, but I didn't know what. I tried to talk to him again, but he always seemed to brush me off, saying that he had too much work to do. Looking back, I realized that those were the warning signs. I should have paid more attention to them, but I was too busy with the kids and the house. I thought that our marriage was solid and that we could work through anything. But I was wrong. And as the divorce proceedings began, I knew that I was in for a long, hard battle. When John told me he wanted a divorce, I was shocked. I felt like the floor had fallen out from under me. We had been together for so long, built a life together, and had children. I thought we could work through our problems, but he seemed determined to move on. "Why? Why do you want a divorce?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I just don't think we're compatible anymore," John replied, looking away from me. "But we can work on that. We can go to counseling or something. Please, let's try to fix things," I pleaded, feeling desperate. "It's too late for that. I've already made up my mind. I want a divorce," he said, his voice firm. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. All the years we had spent together, all the memories we had made, and he just wanted to throw it all away. I tried to reason with him, but he was resolute. He had already talked to a lawyer and was ready to move forward with the divorce proceedings. As we began the process of untangling our lives, it became clear that John wasn't willing to compromise. He wanted everything to go his way, and he was willing to fight dirty to make it happen. "Why are you doing this, John? We can work together and come up with a fair settlement," I said, feeling frustrated. "I'm not going to give up what's mine just because you're feeling hurt," he replied, his tone cold. "But we built this life together. We shared everything. It's not fair for you to just take it all," I said, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "I worked hard for what I have. I'm not going to just give it up because you feel entitled to it," he said, his voice rising. The tension between us was palpable. And I knew that this divorce was going to be anything but amicable. But I also knew that I couldn't just give up without a fight. I hired a lawyer and prepared for what was to come, and as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, I knew that I was in for the fight of my life. As I sat in my lawyer's office, I felt overwhelmed. The divorce proceedings were taking a toll on me, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to keep going. But my lawyer was reassuring, and he had some advice that gave me hope. "Based on what you've told me, it seems like your husband has been hiding his assets. He's been transferring them to his mother's name to avoid giving you a fair settlement," my lawyer said, his tone serious. "But how is that legal? Can't we do something about it?" I asked, feeling confused. "It's not legal, but it's difficult to prove. However, there are ways we can work around it. We can investigate and gather evidence to show that he's been hiding his assets," he replied, his voice measured. "But how do we do that? He's been so careful. I don't even know where to start," I said, feeling lost. "That's where I come in. I have a team of investigators who can help us. But we need to be strategic about this. We can't tip our hand too soon. We need to gather as much evidence as we can before we confront him," he said, his eyes glinting with determination. As we talked, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe there was a way to get what I deserved. Maybe I could come out of this divorce with something to show for it. But how long will this take? I feel like I've been fighting this for so long already, I said, feeling tired. It will take time, but it's worth it. We need to be patient and methodical. But I promise you, we will do everything in our power to get you a fair settlement, he said, his voice reassuring. I left his office feeling more hopeful than I had in a long time. Maybe there was a way to turn the tide in my favor. Maybe I could come out of this divorce with my head held high. And as I prepared for the fight ahead, I knew that I had a good lawyer on my side. A lawyer who was determined to get me the justice I deserved. As my lawyer had promised, we started investigating John's assets. We combed through his financial records, looking for any evidence of hidden assets. And eventually, we found something that shook the foundation of the divorce proceedings. We found something. Something big, my lawyer said, his voice tense. What is it? What did you find? I asked, my heart racing. Your husband has been funneling his entire fortune into his mother's name. He's been doing it for years. It's a blatant attempt to hide his assets and avoid giving you a fair settlement, he said, his tone serious. I felt a wave of anger wash over me. All the years I had spent with him, building a life together, and he had just been using me. I felt like a fool. But how can we prove it? Do we have any evidence? I asked, feeling desperate. We have the financial records. We have the transfers. We have everything we need to prove that he's been hiding his assets, he said, his eyes glinting with determination. But how do we use this? Can we take legal action against him? I asked, feeling hopeful. We can. We can use this evidence to force him to come to a fair settlement. He can't hide his assets forever, and once we confront him with this evidence, he'll have no choice but to come to the table, he said, his voice reassuring. As we prepared to confront John with this evidence, I felt a sense of relief. Maybe there was a way out of this mess. Maybe I could finally get what I deserved. Are you ready to do this? This is going to be a tough battle, but we can win it, my lawyer said, looking at me. I'm ready. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Let's do it, I said, my voice firm. As we marched forward, armed with our evidence, I knew that we were in for a fight. But I also knew that we had the upper hand. We had the evidence and we had the will to win. And as we prepared for the confrontation that would change everything, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could come out of this divorce with something to show for it. The day of the confrontation with John finally arrived. My lawyer and I walked into the conference room, where John and his lawyer were waiting for us. John's face was unreadable, but I could tell that he was nervous. We have some evidence that we'd like to present to you, my lawyer said, his tone measured. What evidence? John's lawyer asked, his voice wary. We have evidence that your client has been hiding his assets by transferring them to his mother's name. It's a blatant attempt to avoid giving my client a fair settlement, my lawyer said, his voice firm. John's lawyer looked at us for a moment, then turned to John. Is this true? He asked. John looked at his lawyer for a moment, then turned to us. Yes, it's true. I did transfer my assets to my mother's name, he said, his voice low. Why did you do it? I asked, feeling angry. I did it to protect my assets. I knew that if we got a divorce, you would try to take everything from me. I didn't want to lose everything I had worked so hard for, he said, his eyes defiant. But that's not fair. We built a life together. I deserve a fair settlement, I said, feeling frustrated. I understand that, but I have a right to protect my assets. And if you want a fair settlement, you'll have to go through my mother, he said, his voice firm. My lawyer stepped in. That's not how it works. You can't hide your assets like this. It's illegal, and we have evidence to prove it. We can take legal action against you and your mother if we have to, he said, his eyes flashing. For a moment, there was silence in the room. John and his lawyer looked at each other, then back at us. Let's settle this, John said, finally breaking the silence. What do you want? I looked at my lawyer, then back at John. I want half of what's rightfully mine. I want a fair settlement, I said, my voice firm. After some negotiation, we finally reached a settlement. It wasn't everything I had hoped for, but it was a fair settlement. As we left the conference room, I felt a sense of relief. It was over. I could finally move on. You did well. You fought hard, and you got what you deserved, my lawyer said, his voice reassuring. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you, I said, feeling grateful. And as I walked out of the conference room, I knew that I had come out of the battle stronger than ever. I had fought for what was rightfully mine, and I had won. The settlement was finalized, and I had received my fair share of the assets. But the victory was bittersweet. I had lost my marriage, my partner, my best friend. The love and trust that we had built over the years had been shattered, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness inside. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. I tried to move on with my life, but it was difficult. Every time I saw something that reminded me of John, my heart ached. I missed him, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that things could have been different if he had only been honest with me from the start. One day, out of the blue, I received a letter in the mail. It was from John's mother, informing me that she had passed away and that she had left her entire fortune to John. My heart sank. It was as if John had won the battle after all. I called my lawyer to ask for advice. "Is there anything we can do?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I'm afraid not. If the fortune was left to John, there's nothing we can do to challenge it," he said, his tone sympathetic. I felt angry and helpless. It wasn't fair. John had hidden his assets, and now he was reaping the rewards. But there was nothing I could do about it. Weeks passed, and I tried to move on with my life. I took up a new hobby, spent time with friends, and tried to focus on my career. But the feeling of injustice lingered in the back of my mind. One day, as I was walking through the park, I saw John sitting on a bench. I hesitated for a moment, then walked over to him. "Hi," I said, my voice tentative. "Hi," he replied, his voice equally uncertain. "How are you?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation neutral. "I'm okay. And you?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. "I'm trying to move on," I said, my voice tinged with bitterness. "I know, and I'm sorry for everything," he said, his voice low. "Why did you do it?" I asked, unable to contain my curiosity. "I don't know. I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything," he said, his voice full of regret. "But you did lose everything. Our marriage, our trust, our love," I said, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "I know, and I'm sorry. I wish I could take it all back," he said, his eyes pleading. For a moment, we sat in silence. The sun was setting, and the park was slowly emptying out. And as I looked at John, I realized that I still loved him. Despite everything, I still cared for him. "I have to go," I said, standing up. "Wait," he said, grabbing my hand. "I know it's too late, but I still love you, and I'll always regret what I did." I looked at him, my heart racing, and for a moment I didn't know what to say. "I have to go?" I repeated, pulling my hand away. As I walked away from him, I felt a sense of closure. I knew that the outcome of the battle had been fair, and that I had fought for what was rightfully mine, but more importantly, I had realized that sometimes love was not enough, and that sometimes even the strongest of bonds could be broken